Proost.
Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini, Willem Slava. Okay. Yeah, you joining? Okay, good. There we go. Okay then. One go, yeah? It's a bigger cup than yours.
Yeah, what do you drink to? Okay, you drink without a toast.
Mm. To your happiness.
Hello, my name is Valeria Izek. Welcome to the Middle Ground. I encourage you to subscribe to all our channels because we are doing this for literally nothing, just to hype you up and to cheer ourselves up after long working days. So let's exchange our energies also in the comments. Today we host on our blue couch Teun Janssen. He's an accredited assistant in the European Parliament, known for his sharp stance on European defense and support for Ukraine. He's the second Dutch guest on our talk show, but the first College of Europe alumnus we have interviewed, which is in itself is unprecedented for the Brussels podcast. Teun is an emblematic example of a public figure many students and young professionals look up to when imagining a future in the European institutions. But does working inside the institutions truly suit everyone who pictures themselves there? And which questions should we be asking to understand whether we're pursuing a genuine calling or simply following a trend? Welcome, Teun.
Hi, nice to be here with you.
Teun, as an accredited assistant in the European Parliament, you are working mostly behind the scenes of your MEP. For those young professionals and students who see themselves in the European Parliament, who are dreaming about it, but might not know all the specifics of being an APA, who you wouldn't recommend to apply for this kind of job?
So I have kind of the perfect example from last week. So it's fresh from the press. And it comes to mind because it was like a sort of very formal meeting between MEPs. You know, we call this like a shadow meeting, right? Like the political leaders on this. It's about like some defense file, doesn't really matter. And there was one guy, like I think late 20s, early 30s or something, and he was there because his MEP couldn't be there. And you know, in that kind of situation, maybe at most he would like read out sort of like the statement of whoever couldn't be there, and then you sit back and relax and just make notes and wait until your MEP can actually call the shots again. But this guy was like soaking up all of the energy in the room and constantly taking the microphone, and he was even contradicting some senior MEPs, being like, "Actually, I read online that it's like this and this and this, so you're wrong." And you can see the body language of people in the room being like, "What the hell is this guy?" And it was not like he was not making the right points. You know, he was actually quite smart and on top of stuff. But he completely wasted his political capital also for his MEP by doing this. You know, so in a way, you need to kind of have ego death as an APA. And I mean, I believe in what I do, and I really believe in the movement that I'm part of. And I also ran for office myself, so that's you might think that's difficult, but it can work, especially if you're with a boss like mine, who gives you a lot of autonomy, a lot of trust. It's a very horizontal way of working, very Dutch. Then it doesn't really matter because there is a voice, there is a brain, there is a heart, and it's basically there's no jealousy there because it's just a division of labor, basically, and you believe in the same thing. So I would recommend to have that, to have a boss that you vibe with, basically. That's the most important thing.
So you say the death of ego. I assume it also concerns the life work balance. And when I think about how's it for you, does it mean that you're doomed to mostly also date people from your work bubble?
Yeah. So on the one hand, because if you're really into this work that you're doing, it becomes kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I've seen people, in yeah, in our own group, in the parliament, yeah, finding love. And to be honest, it was like the European Union's plan to make like a cohort of very enthusiastic pro-Europeans, like Erasmus babies.
Yeah.
And this is the way to do it, right? And then you post them abroad. You create kind of like this sort of European identity on steroids. But to be honest, I've now discovered also that when I come home, I want to read a book. I want to also, even when I have friends, who are basically in the Euro bubble, the ones that I get the most close with are the people I can sort of make fun of the institution with a little bit. That's also what I like to do when I meet new people. I try to sort of, it's a bit silly, but I try to ask provocative questions just to test if people can sort of joke about themselves a little bit. And I think it's the same with romantic life. Like you got to be able to make fun a little bit of this environment you're in. And also those are the best relationships you can have when it's based on that, not on like quicksand just because you're working on some file together or you're in the same sort of like group. It has to be that. It has to be a little bit like
Speaking about the files you're working on, it's mostly defense files. Strike on the Romanian border, Polish train track explosion, interceptions over the Baltic, fighter jet incursions in Estonia, drone incidents above Belgian civil airports and military bases.
yeah.
And at the same time, the Christmas markets are popping up here and there. I'm wondering how about this guns or butter discussion
Mm,
that you're leading in the European
mm.
Parliament?
Yeah, this is a really key one because it comes from a deep sort of emotional place. People speak from the heart and from the stomach. And it's the same with this because I also work with a lot of people who are very progressive, and they really want to be on the right side of history. But their origins of their political movement or them personally was sort of the struggle against war, against militarism. So they're pacifists. They don't want to have more tanks, more fighter jets, more of this stuff. And I totally I get that. But it's such a difficult discussion to go from peace. Like what is that? How do you get to peace? How do you really get to peace? And how do you get to peace when you have different people, different countries like Russia, like imperialist, colonialist countries? I don't have to explain that to you, who are not seeking peace. It's not like it doesn't start from ourselves. And I think often politicians in Europe they start from that wrong assumption that like we kind of still mentally own the world and that we have all the agency and we have all the initiative to be able to make decisions. But it's not like this thing is being forced upon us, which is scary for people to accept. That you can't just with some magic wand decide, oh, let's have negotiations, let's have peace. But that's not what it is. And guns or butter, if you really want to think the next step, it's also having the ambition to actually think about, okay, how can you have both? How can you have hospitals, schools, bridges, the green transition, while also having enough invested in your common defense? And then you're looking into territory like joint debt, like Eurobonds. I'm from a country that is vehemently opposed to this, almost like a fetish to be against common debt. Uh, but if you do that, if you really come for that European solution and you invest together, you can have both. But it takes a bit of a mental shift to make.
In our previous discussions, you also brought up Pieter Bruegel's paintings, and you said that they reflect to a certain extent how Europeans treat defense and security nowadays. What exact painting do you mean?
You know the one with the playing children? Of like sort of games that have been lost to time. We don't even know anymore what those games are, and children don't play them anymore. It's like everyone is playing their own game, like independently from each other, with their own rules, with their own stakes, with their own culture, their own language. And that's the problem because we're all sort of playing a different game from Portugal to Estonia, different priorities, basically, different strategies, and different sense of how existential this kind of conflict is. And that's the tricky part. I really like actually a different painting, more in terms of like where we should be going, and that's the reply of the Zaporozhian Cossacks, this famous painting. Yeah, I have it hanging up also in my living room because it's like, okay, I mean, we are more powerful than we think. If we just decide together, we band together and we say, no, no, we actually don't take this. And in a way, you sort of take out the fear factor. You say, not to make fun of a horrible situation, but to say we laugh evil in the face. And back then, Cossacks, they didn't have that much power compared to the Sultan that they were insulting on paper. We as Europe right now, we have like such bigger economies, so much more advanced technology. It's a matter of just accepting that we're much stronger together if we decide to laugh evil in the face, because that's what also Roosevelt said. Like, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And I think that's the biggest sort of issue that we have to solve right now in Europe.
I can imagine because you always bring defense and security topics, it might be difficult to socialize with people outside of the bubble. And I know that you have twin sisters who have nothing
Yeah,
to do with politics.
yeah,
How do you find what to talk about with when you have such a passion to a topic, but you also want
yeah.
to be connected to people
Of
who are
course.
just not part of it?
I love being challenged. Actually, I even love being made fun of. Like one of my sisters, especially. Well, technically the younger one, but they're like seconds apart, right? So it doesn't really matter. But she can really sort of test me on my bullshit sometimes, which I really love. I think that's super healthy in any, in friendship or in family or in relationships as well. She just finished the Camino, actually, like the whole thing in like under a month. She walked all the way. So it's super cool, I think. Yeah, I've actually, in a way, I think I've gotten closer to my family since I moved here. It's a little bit more going back to the core of what it is like. I think also I've been inspired by people that I met here who have way more, like, culturally speaking or personally, like stronger ties to their family. For me, for example, my extended family, I don't really have that much, contact with them. But also things like hospitality and stuff like that, like from different cultures. Being Dutch is like sort of, it's not really the most straightforward thing. It's not the first thing you think about. So
Yeah,
yeah, hundred
I never
percent.
hear Dutch and hospitality in one
No, no,
sentence, you know.
it's true. It's true. Yeah.
Speaking about life outside work, so your sisters are interested in Camino walks and you're playing piano.
Mhm.
And I can imagine that being an APA and coining out time to play something might be very difficult. But still, when you do have time and you're playing, do you do this to ruminate about something sad or to celebrate some joy? What's the story behind?
I mean, it's both in a way. I mean, I think for a couple of years after I basically graduated from university, I was kind of like chasing a career and trying to move faster and faster and faster. I never let myself really relax and enjoy what I've done. And this is part of it for me because I learned piano when I was like younger, and I kind of left it rusting for a while. And I recently bought a new piece with like sort of weighted keys, electronic one. And for me, it's a way to prove to myself, like, hold on, like you can also just enjoy where you are and take a couple of hours per week to actually play and reflect. And I like playing Chopin and Debussy as well. Those are my favorite sort of like pieces. So it's both, but it's kind of like a moment in my week to prove that, like, okay, I'm still okay, like I can still do this, and to enjoy like sort of like where I am, because yeah, you don't always have to sort of run faster and farther. You know what I mean?
So, on the same list with the piano, I know that you're also cooking
Mhm.
and especially slow cooking
Mhm.
because it's a sort of therapeutic exercise
Mhm.
for you. What is the biggest work related damage that you have to recover with your slow
Okay.
cooking?
Oof. I think it's dealing with people who move very quickly. That's the opposite. But who either, they're very lazy, or they're incompetent, or they have a bad agenda, or all three of the combined. Those are the worst. And there's a lot of noise in my head around that because there's so many people like that who hold a lot of power, and sometimes you feel like you're sort of shouting in the void. So for me, cooking is a way, because most of the days I'm either reading or I'm listening or talking or I'm listening to some podcasts on the move. And cooking is the only time in the week where I'm just focusing on doing something with my hands in a way. It's a very mental job as well, and it kind of makes you lazy. You work too much with your head. So, it's not like I'm constructing a house or something like this. Maybe that's the next step. But cooking for me is just a way to be physically active and use a different part of my brain.
It feels like you are in a certain way compensate through your hobbies what you don't have in your work.
Yeah,
And in that
yeah,
respect,
sure.
I know you're also gambling and
Uh-huh.
playing poker. Is that another way to compensate for the lack of risk that
Sure.
politicians are taking in today's politics, especially with all the external threats that are coming their way?
Mm. And maybe cooking is a way to sort of take control of the situation where you normally can't take control of. And with gambling, I think It is a bit like that. I mean, it can also be for the record, I don't do it all the time. Like, I like sometimes going with people, especially with friends or even with colleagues, to play some games. But yeah, to be honest, it annoys the shit out of me how little people take risks in Europe, full stop, and then they're hiding behind procedures or like established practice. And sometimes you really got to sort of break up the status quo and do something very radically different. And I mean, especially, you're from Ukraine, like, you know exactly what that means. When you have to be creative, when you have to be quick on your feet. Um, yeah, so maybe that's part of it because it can get to you, really like the sort of slowness and the procedures of it. So yeah, gambling, but risk taking isn't necessarily how to say this. It is also daring to jump into the dark and trying something very different. And poker has its own rules, like you have to stick to the rules. In the end, the house always wins. But in terms of actually breaking through established practice, you create your own rules, and the house doesn't have to win. And I like sort of always thinking about like how can we do it totally differently, even if it's initially stupid and makes no sense and people make fun of you. I think that's better than sticking to what works.
I can totally relate to the feeling of gambling because, in a way,
Yeah,
what we're doing in our project, we're just working in the darkness. We never know if it's gonna fly or not. So it really depends on you, our viewers and
yeah,
listeners. Please let us know and don't keep us in the darkness so that we play our game better. Like in gambling, you're losing and winning in the European Parliament. And of course, if you're in a small political group like Greens is, you're losing more often than winning. How do you go through
yeah,
those losses and what keeps you going,
yeah.
even though your victories might happen once or twice per year?
And you got to embrace the chaos because that's the way politics is, especially this institution. And I've seen it happening, after months of like preparing strategies and aligning with people and like hours and hours of meetings. And some person is replaced by some last minute person who has no idea what's going on and is totally incompetent and says something randomly and your whole thing just collapses. So it happens. I think the way to mitigate it is just to be surrounded by other people who go through the same thing. And you got to be all the time, kind of the earliest person in the room, the smartest person in the room, and the nicest person in the room. And that's the only way you can try to punch above your weight, even when you have limited sort of real power. And there have been situations where just because someone was under a lot of time pressure, who was formerly a lot more powerful than we were involved in the process, we worked with them to get things done. And a lot of our ideas then made its way into their product. And the key thing then again there, I think, is sort of the ego death thing. You got to accept that your ideas, you're not going to take the credit for them. Some other MEP from some other group will do it, but the impact will be good for Europe, at least a little bit. Like, and that's a thing. That's the key thing. Like accepting that other people will take credit, and yeah, then you've done your best.
So for me, it feels like there are actually some advantages of working in small political groups because you're more visible if you want to
Hmm.
make an impact. What are the other tips for those who might consider small political groups
Yeah.
so that they don't shy away
I
from making this step?
think our extra advantage also with Volt in particular is that we don't really have like a national constituency. So it's kind of like a European movement. So, when I sort of try to make our case for a position, I'm not thinking about like, oh, what's this big car manufacturing industry in my home state that we have to be accountable to, or who are these big vested power players? We don't really have that. So we're quicker on our feet. So, for example, with Ukraine, we very early on signed the sort of no-fly zone initiative because we didn't really have to check at home with people who were sort of in the industry or whatever if they would support it or not. So we're quicker on our feet. And the other thing is that sort of when you're actually negotiating, because you have to get creative, you're under pressure, you think of new things. So there was one thing for example, for Moldova, where we knew, okay, I mean, we're not really going to get our way if we just follow the formal processes only. So basically, we are trying to have meetings with other people from Moldova itself, for example, or from think tanks, sort of to lobby the lobbyists in a way that they are going to push for the same thoughts that we have, even though we don't really have a platform to call for it. And that's it kind of force you to be creative, force you to be efficient also in a way. And I think that's kind of a cool experience. So you're kind of playing 5D chess. You don't get lazy that much, when you're at a small group.
What would you answer to those people who say that if you want to make a noise, you go work to the European Parliament, and if you actually want to make a difference, you go and work in the European Commission? We all know that
Mm-hmm.
European Parliament resolutions don't have legally binding nature,
Sure.
and even though they make a political statement and introduce some political idea out there, there's still not
Yeah.
much you can do with them.
I mean, the whole point about politics is to make noise, right? And to make noise very loudly so that the people who voted you in, that actually have the feeling that they can have some control over power, truth to power. And I mean, in the the German Parliament or the British Parliament or the French Parliament start out the same, like as a talking shop and as people being loud in the room. I think it's about claiming the space. That's European Parliament. Yeah, sure, it's about being loud, and sometimes people don't take it seriously, but over time, sort of like you have to show that you're credible, that you are present, that you have good ideas, so that you also claim that space, over many decades. But when it comes to some specific things, I mean, when you think about the growth plan, for example, for Moldova or the European budget, then we do actually have the ability to say, hold on, we should have more money for these and these and these lawyers, for example, and these cities in Moldova for capacity building, or we should have more money for breakthrough tech innovation, and then you can use your leverage. And to be honest, I think a lot of members of the European Parliament and some groups that get a little bit lazy with sort of using that power. They feel like they're just the executors of the member states. But come on, we have leverage. We can hold the member states hostage if it's about really fundamental things to become political. Like you have to act before you get it. You can't just receive power. You have to sort of claim it.
There are not that many reflections in the pop culture about the whole EU bubble or institutions in general, but the one which stands out and which everyone, I think, watched was the Parliament.
Hmm.
Uh, did you spot any misconceptions there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one is that MEPs are not that incompetent. I mean, you got to find them. You got to really take care to find them. On the far left and on the far right, they exist, but they're even more comical than the guy depicted in the show. I think in different ways. But the other thing is like the episodes are way too short because even for the smallest of ideas that you want to push, it takes like hours and hours of meetings. The parliament is like an onion, like of different layers, and everyone has an ego. Everyone wants to be involved. Everyone wants to feel like they contributed to something, and you need to get buy-in before you ever go in public and propose anything, right? Even the smallest procedural changes. So Parliament would be way more boring if it was realistic because it would just be him saying the same exact thing 20 times or a different person from more technical or political layer of the institution. So that's doesn't make for good TV, but that's the reality of it. It's a lot of coffee, it's a lot of repetition, basically.
So, Ton, between piano classes, gambling, cooking, and doing politics, how do you define your middle ground?
Mhm. For me, it's really important that you don't take yourself too seriously, but you take your passions very seriously, and what you believe in. And that should go hand in hand because if you don't, either your ego gets too big or you get stuck in sort of the treadmill of the daily practice and whatever is written in Brussels playbook every morning and you forget your big visions. That's my middle ground. And I try to make fun of myself a little bit and challenge others to do the same as much as I can.
Well, we're definitely taking our passions very seriously because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here at 10 p.m. On Tuesday evening recording this episode. And you don't even know that it's the third time we're recording this exact expression. Then we have a tradition in our show. We ask our previous guests to ask a question to the next one.
Mhm.
And the one for you is: has Brussels changed you? And if yes, how?
Yes, I think my manners have massively improved. So I've discovered the concept of hospitality, and I've discovered the concept of courtesy and courting, let's say, because of some very good Eastern European and Central European influences mainly. That's the biggest one. I've realized that I'm a lot less Dutch than I already thought. I feel a lot more, in a way, like Belgian or
Civilized.
well, civilized. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, that's sort of you asked me about Bruegel before, also, right? It's also like the sort of vibe of like, come on, just celebrate life a little. It's all about saving money or like being pure or like sort of, it's really about also having fun, enjoying yourself, and celebrating life. So yeah, that way for sure.
And since you are not taking yourself seriously and
Hmm.
encouraging everyone to take themselves with a pinch of salt, I'm curious what would be your question to the next speaker.
Okay, so maybe I would ask, like, what is the last time where you felt like you were the most uninteresting person in the room, and why? I'm really curious to hear from your guests when that was.
And now my favorite part, we always ask our guests to bring something they cannot leave without in Brussels.
Hmm.
So please don't tell me that it's your steep card or an umbrella.
I don't have a steep card yet. I'm too unorganized to get that fixed so far. I also haven't had my installation allowance cleared yet. I'm barely registered in Brussels now for a few weeks only. Don't
That's
tell the
not something
municipal
that you
government
needed
this.
to
Yeah, don't tell the
announce.
municipal government this. But one is a sock because the only way for me to keep my mental sanity is through running at least 2 times a week. Otherwise, I go completely nuts. That's one, and the other one is it's a fiction book, the Expanse series, and it's about sort of like far into the future,
I
like
watched
humanity
it.
and the stars. You watched it,
Yes, I
okay?
watched it.
The
My
the show
ex.
is really good, right? Yeah, it's
Yes.
very similar to the books, I would say. It's close to the idea, and it's nice because it makes you think about the future, like what could be, but also like again, think about something that's not just related to the Brussels bubble, your work, something that calms your brain down a little bit. So I can totally recommend, and a TV show indeed as well.
Yeah. 111.
111.
So now we're moving to our favorite part, which is rapid fire question.
Let's go. Let's go.
And the first one, what's your Brussels power move during networking events?
Really dark jokes, like something that really is terrible and probably will get me cancelled, like in the bubble. And like, yeah, I hope people don't repeat it afterwards. Yeah.
Favorite composer?
Chopin.
Good that it's.
On the record. Yeah.
What's the one non-EU place you go to feel like you're escaping the bubble?
Bad La Cambre. Yeah, deep into Bad La Cambre, like almost kind of like Waterloo, like into the forest. I have my favorite tree as well there. Is that weird?
Do,
That's a thing.
do you hug it?
Yes, of course. Of course. People hug trees, right? That's a normal thing to do. Why not?
What is your favorite lunch or coffee spot in Brussels?
Rarely have time for lunch or coffee spots in Brussels, but there is what's the thing? Like it's a counter something lunch place. Like they have like Boston style like sandwiches.
Okay.
It's around Boniface. I have to
Okay.
look up the name, but like it's amazing. It's like a diner kind of
I
place.
think it's because you're.
Fuck, that's the one. Fuck, that's the one. Yeah. So
It's-
good. Okay, let's do that again. It's so good. Yeah.
That's because you're Dutch. You just look for something
Sure,
familiar.
but like it's a warm sandwich though. It's like an upgrade in between.
If Brussels were an animal, what kind of animal would it be?
Really fucked up kind of animal, like a Frankenstein kind of monster, kind of like it's like a swan, but it's also like a weird ugly duck, and then it's like a sort of like a swine, and it's like all things together. I don't know. That's the best answer I can come up with. Maybe a mole.
First place you take visiting friends or family to prove Brussels is cool.
Ah, right. Flagey for sure. I mean, I live close to there. I'm one of those people. I'm sorry, I do live there. And otherwise, like, yeah, the canal actually. Like, I love it around there. And all the bars. It's a great neighborhood, I think, to be.
Name one MEP from another political group whose work you admire.
Rasa Yuknevich. She's EPP
Okay.
actually, but very outspoken Lithuanian, at least on the fence. I think she's got a lot of charisma, but especially like really fire in her, and she doesn't compromise. She doesn't bullshit. There is no bullshit within her. I really like that.
Yeah, we really like no bullshit MEPs.
Mm-hmm.
What's one thing Brussels gets right that the rest of Europe doesn't?
You can't fix chaos. You gotta embrace it.
What can I add to this? And which commissioner would you want to be stuck in a lift with?
None of them. I want to abolish them. I want them to lose all of their jobs because we need a directly elected European government with no commissioners and no European Commission. So I would not be able to identify any one of them for you. We just still have to elect these people, and then I would decide one that I would like to live with, basically.
We're a non-political talk show.
But I like the commission. I really like the commission, but I want them to be democratically elected and proper government to be more powerful. Actually, if you think about it, so it's a good thing for them, for the record. Yeah.
No, I think
Yeah.
we want to see more people like you. I don't care in the parliament or in the commission, but we wish you good luck at this next elections.
Thank you.
And we want more Dutch politicians like you.
Thank you. There's already some really good ones from Volt. Let's have more of them.